This is Marco Reus.
This is Shinji Kagawa.
This is Nuri Shahin.
Hello, this is Jadon Sancho.
And you're listening to the Yellowwall podcast.
Welcome to episode 335 of the Yellowwallpod. I'm your host Stefan Butzko, and today we will try to preview the upcoming season, which starts Monday with the German DFB Pokal against MSV Duisburg. And for all that and more, join me once again, Matthias Zug. Hello, Matthias. How are you doing?
Hello, Stefan. I'm doing well. Shoveling out the snow as one does in late summer. How are you?
It's fairly warm in Philadelphia today. Still no shoveling snow yet. Luckily, do you have fires as well there? Is it like snow and fire apocalypse in Denver?
No fires here right now. Some other areas, but no, we're okay overall.
Well, I don't know how the weather is in. Where are you right now? Berlin, Konstantin Eckner. Hello.
Hi. No, it's all right. It's no snow to be seen. Fairly Berlin-like weather for mid-September.
So I guess it's gray.
Well, no, it's actually fairly good weather for mid-September. How about we should move on and leave the weather channel for now?
Yeah, we should. But before we do that, like everyone else, as the season starts, I asked them to introduce themselves to our new listeners. So, Konstantin, without further ado, you may do the same and please tell our audience who the hell you are.
Hell, might describe it very well. No, just kidding. So I'm one of the guests, regular guests, more or less on this very show. As you already said, based in Berlin, mostly working as a sports journalist for a variety of outlets, BBC and ESPN and Times and so on, and German outlets, and also still being the managing editor of Spielverlagerung.com, which is a tactics blog widely known, at least in Germany and Europe.
Awesome. Yeah, that's very good. And what's also nice is that we have a sponsor for this episode, but I don't know if he or she wants to be named, so he just put in his or her name as null void. But for that particular listener, still, thank you very much for doing so. And if you want to sponsor an episode and get a shout out maybe, then go to patreon.com/theyellowwall for more information. And I guess so it's time for us to actually start the episode, and I guess I'll start with one topic, and I don't know if that's the best way to dive into it. Season preview, but let's just rip off the band-aid, and that is that about 2 weeks ago, Sportbild reported that Favre's contract will only be extended if he wins the league. Reminder: he is entering his third year as a head coach of Borussia Dortmund, and his contract runs out at the end of the season. Now, Matthias, to add a little context to that reporting, and I'm obviously not 100% sure whether Borussia Dortmund really have set such an ultimatum or whether that is their decision making, but according to 538, Bayern wins the league with the 81% probability, and I think the website has Dortmund and Leipzig at 7%, and Watzke at the financial disclosure press conference dubbed Bayern Munich as maybe the best ever Bayern team that has played right now. So given how the odds are stacked not in Favre's favor, do you think this is the final year of Lucien Favre, and do you think that if this ultimatum thingy is true, that Dortmund are setting themselves up for drama by raising the expectations so high?
Well, I guess the short answer is yes. I think it probably will be Favre's last season, unless, of course, Dortmund do win the league. And, I just don't see that happening, to be perfectly honest. So, probably going to be his last season. Whether or not they actually made such an ultimatum, I don't really see them sitting him down and being like, well, if you don't win the Bundesliga title this season especially getting past a team that just won the treble and did so emphatically, we're not going to extend your contract. I don't necessarily see them being quite that crass. But the general understanding is they want to progress. The progression from second place is first place, and I just don't see that happening. And so maybe they don't see Favre as the future, but we'll also have to see who else is available. I mean, that's kind of been the caveat over the last 3 years, even preceding Favre's time at Dortmund was, okay, who do we get when Tuchel was gone? So I think there are a few variables, but overall, I just get a feeling this probably will be his last season.
Yeah, I have the similar feeling. I really don't know if this reporting is correct or not, because I would like to think that a club like Dortmund evaluates the performance of a head coach a little bit differently than just on strict results in the first place finish, which is really hard to achieve. But Konstantin, if you think about the 2 seasons that Favre had so far, what do you expect of him in his personal development going into his 3rd year? And do you think that there is a chance that Dortmund extend his contract prematurely, meaning before the season runs out? And do you think there's a chance that Dortmund fire him and maybe try out a new coach already for the next year?
So I don't really know about his personal development because Favre is not a coach that is fairly young, and where you think that there are a lot of developmental steps to be taken.
Yeah, but that being said,
stage.
I mean, he never coached a team of the size of Dortmund, so I think there is still something where you can grow, right?
Yeah, but he still he coached Borussia Mönchengladbach, still a fairly big club with a large membership and fan base. Shouldn't forget that. So it's not like he hasn't dealt with media attention. I mean, he has. So that's one point.
He was the coach in Berlin. I think at Hertha Berlin, you actually have more media attention than in Gladbach.
I'm not even sure. I think there are more media outlets, or I mean, there are a lot of media. There are a lot of media outlets in Berlin, but many of them don't really pay attention, so much attention to Hertha, because Hertha is like cray and boring, or has been.
Well, that's all gonna change, but
yeah, of course,
let's not digress.
But Mönchengladbach, because of the 70s, has a large fan base in Germany, and a lot of younger folks also grew up liking Gladbach because their dads were big into Gladbach in the 70s. So you shouldn't underestimate the kind of audience Gladbach draws. But be it as it may, all right. I don't really see him developing at this stage in his career, and I don't think that was expected. And he has like kind of his own style, and his personality is unique, to put it that way. And his personality hasn't changed. So there you go. As far as the contract situation, what's to be expected during the next 12 months or so, I think Dortmund has to. There are 2 decisions to be made here. One is that, let's say Dortmund, they struggle, and he comes under fire. He meaning Favre. Of course, there is the scenario that Favre could get sacked. I don't really see the second scenario being that, like, basically his contract runs out at the end of the season and that's it. So, I mean, there could be a possibility that he says, all right, I'm done here after the season. All right, then the club can't do anything. And I don't think that's a reason to fire him prematurely. But if they say, right, we are at least satisfied with what Favre does, then we might go into contract negotiations in late winter or something like that. Because, going into the last 2 months or so of the season without really knowing what's going on with the coaching position, because you have a coach with an contract running out. I don't think that's really what a club like Dortmund wants to have. So really, the decision has to be made either to fire him if everything goes upside down, or maybe think about extending his contract if they are satisfied by the progress the team made. Also, you have to keep in mind that I think the expectations were higher, I think, last summer because of the season before, his first season, where there was a fair possibility for some time at least that Dortmund might win the championship. Last season, you got the scenario with Bayern struggling and all the stuff, firing Niko Kovac. Absolutely, you got that. But also you saw how dominant Bayern were at the end of the season. So I don't think anyone goes into this season now expecting Dortmund to realistically challenge Bayern for the championship, unless they are they're just going things criminally wrong. But normally you shouldn't expect that, at least.
Yeah, no, you're probably right. So I don't want to talk too long about Bayern, but I've heard you on the Auf Ohren podcast of schwarzgelb.de. Greetings. And you said that the difference between the treble-winning Bayern of 2013 and the treble-winning Bayern now is that this team still has more upside and can actually grow and improve. Meanwhile, the other team back then was more declining, so that's pretty daunting. And I also don't see Bayern faltering anytime soon, to be honest. So as Jürgen Klopp would maybe say, try to finish second in the most beautiful way is what Dortmund can expect from this season. Obviously, it's still sport and unexpected things can happen, but realistically, I think this is sort of where Dortmund's ceiling is right now, which is in the long term not a bad thing, because it's still a positive feedback loop, and that means Dortmund still get bigger than everyone else if they consistently finish on top of the other 16 teams minus Bayern. So it's not completely rubbish. So Matthias, that all being said, last season Dortmund obviously struggled for large parts of the Hinrunde. Then came the infamous switch to the back three, and things worked out a little better for Dortmund, and also I guess the team overall built some more chemistry. I mean, there were a couple more signings that needed time to adapt, like Hummels, even though he was adapting fairly quickly, but Julian Brandt, Hazard, and obviously Haaland in the second half of the season. So how do you expect this Dortmund side to continue where they left off in the second half of last season?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, it comes down to the aforementioned Lucien Favre, and if he decides to do a back four or the back three. Obviously, the back four was part of the issue in the first half of last season, and whenever he's used it now during preseason, it just didn't look very good. I think the back three definitely plays more to Dortmund's strengths. So I would hope he would persist with that. And if he does, the good thing is there's a lot of depth there, except for maybe, we've raised the question about an additional center back, especially on the right-hand side. But overall, the depth is very good. The flexibility is very good. And there are a lot of options available to him in that kind of 3-4-3 system where Dortmund played overall extraordinarily well in the second half of the season. So if they do that, and obviously most of the players are used to the squad now, and I always feel like young players, like Bellingham as an example, will probably get used to it quicker. And so Can will be there now longer. Haaland is there longer. There's not a lot of transition in the squad. So I think they're going to play better from the start, which obviously technically means, that's upside, maybe make up some of those lost points to Bayern that way. But the difference is Bayern is not starting with the massive handicap of Niko Kovac as manager. And I feel has obviously strengthened and is healthy. And all of those things combined I'll be honest. I think Dortmund hit the ground running, but Bayern will hit the ground running away. And so usually optimistic self, I just don't see Dortmund really at the end of the season challenging for the title, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm just gonna forward this claim you just made over to Konstantin, because if I look at this Dortmund side right now, and obviously the preseason doesn't give away too many things, but we have seen a few preseasons in the past, and I will say that Dortmund have looked much better at this stage of the season or preseason than they have this time around. The sponsor of our episode actually asked a week ago, why is Favre abandoning the back three? Then he asked, will we have enough defenders for either system? Why? I'm confused. Am I overreacting? So Konstantin, I feel like especially with the back four that we've seen so far in the preseason, Dortmund looked very void of any automatism, and build-up play was as atrocious as it was at the start of last season. So obviously we never seen a full strength team together because Favre always mixed it up in the test games. But yeah, I don't think Dortmund are on the level yet where they can be, which is a very obvious statement. But I really fear for the first couple of weeks of the season. How is your feeling going into this?
I mean, my feeling is somewhat the same, meaning that I don't think that they will be even close to 100 or even 90% going into the season. That being said, most of the other teams aren't either. So should keep that in mind, that other teams also have their struggles right now, because the schedule has changed, shorter summer period, the transfer market and negotiations interfere basically with preseason preparation when it comes to a couple of the clubs aiming for a higher position in the league, meaning like Leipzig and Leverkusen, for instance. So it's not like Dortmund is alone with these kind of issues right now. What I would also say is that you mentioned back four, back five. I'm absolutely of the opinion that Dortmund should stick to the system they used in the second half, or basically the 2/3 of last season, meaning the back three. I think that the squad fits the back three better. You got more options, and as you said, there wasn't one match where in one preseason match in which the, like, let's say, best starting 11 played together. All the 11 or 12 or 13 players that should be in a starting 11 played together. That wasn't the case, so there wasn't really preparation in terms of like how could the team look as strong as possible. So that's also a concern. So why not rely on what worked last season? Although we remember that like the last few matches of last season, or we shouldn't remember them actually. We should just bury them under.
We should never talk about them again.
Yeah, we should never talk about Hoffenheim again and bury it 6 feet under. But that the back three worked quite well, and also I don't know what it means, but in the last preseason friendly against Sparta Rotterdam, Favre went back to the back three after employing the back four in all the previous preseason matches. I don't know if that means anything. Just saying. Maybe he came to the conclusion that it shouldn't, or it can't really work with that kind of back four right now, and he needs more time or whatever. We know that the back four is his kind of preferred backline formation, and also subsequently like the lineup consists of a back four and 4-3-3, 4-2-3-1, something like that. So that's his preferred system. So maybe he will give it another try at another time, or I don't know, or he just can't help himself and just go with the back four going into the season. I don't know. It's just, I think that was very interesting to see that suddenly they went back to the back three in the last preseason friendly.
Well, I mean, it is interesting in many aspects. Because Favre said, I think during this preseason, it's easier to switch from a back four to a back three than the other way around, and meaning maybe he wants to get the automatism, as I like to call them, running a bit better if this team trains with a back four. But very late in the preseason, they started to train with a back three again. Now, it has been conveyed via Ruhrnachrichten and other outlets like Kicker and so on that the switch to a back three was also born out of a demand by the players when things weren't going well in, I think, was it September or so? That Favre was sort of forced a little bit or egged on, or however you want to call it, and maybe this time a little bit of politics, player politics, or maybe the I don't know, Zorg or whoever maybe pushed him in that direction as well. I don't know, but this is always a little void that allows pundits and fans to speculate of what's going on in the background. Also interesting that Lucien Favre very offensively, I would say, said that he basically needs two teams to fulfill the strenuous demands of this season, because there will be a lot of so-called English weeks until Christmas, basically. So I think the first couple of weeks Dortmund only play on weekends, but then it's pretty much a midweek game every week. So there's going to be a lot of football. Matthias, do you think that Favre at least has changed a tiny bit by being more vocal about what he wants than he usually is, or is my memory just warped and Favre's always been like that?
I think he's always kind of mentioned some things that he wants. It's always well and good to do that now when no one's playing. I think once the ball gets rolling, he'll probably be more his usual self, as you put it, just because you don't want to bring in distraction stuff when people are playing and so on. If you're doing it a little bit in build up, even though it's not much of a distraction, I think you can kind of get away with it. So, and he's not necessarily wrong. I just looked at the schedule for the first 5 matches, and it's definitely interesting because it gets bookended by Gladbach and Schalke. And so, and then in between are the quote unquote winnable matches. So it'll be really, really interesting to see how they start things off, because Gladbach to begin with is definitely a difficult task. So it'll be, I think him being more on the offensive with his comments, maybe trying to set a tone, which is something that he's oftentimes been criticized of not really being able to do, because he's more soft-spoken and cerebral in his approach. So maybe this is his attempt at doing that.
Yeah, fair enough. So let's discuss the overall transfer picture a little bit. I mean, ESPN just came out with a report that Manchester United are pushing on to with the Jadon Sancho deal and have agreed agent fees or whatever. So I'm still pretty sure this deal in the end won't happen. But Konstantin, Dortmund have lost Achraf Hakimi, but they have gained Thomas Meunier, and they have gained Hainier and obviously Jude Bellingham. So your overall assessment of how Dortmund improved or got worse with this transfer window?
I mean, I guess overall they have improved. Losing Hakimi was, I think, a big hit, and I think a hit that has been somewhat underestimated, or I think there's not enough talk about losing Hakimi and how it could impact the team. Bringing in Meunier, good move, especially for quote unquote for free. Still, I don't think that Meunier is the kind of player Hakimi is, so he doesn't bring
that's the kind insight we have you on here for.
Yes. He doesn't have like the kind of unique qualities Hakimi has. He's more of a...
Well, but how many fullbacks minus maybe Alphonso Davies really have that terrific amount of speed and the I don't know, the attacking mojo that Hakimi unfolds. I feel like this sort of signing is really hard to replicate, and I have another question in store for you later down the road. But yeah, it's going to be different, which is maybe why also Favre tried to revert to back four. I'm not sure, but Meunier is also not really a right back. You know, he's also more of a wing back.
Yes, of course. But that brings, that's the question. What about the back three and having wing backs? I think you can have Murray as a wing back. You can use Meunier as a wing back. Of course, Hakimi is like the picture perfect wing back. But coming back to your initial question, I think overall, as I said, they have improved. You got Bellingham, huge talent. Maybe not someone for the starting 11 right now, but if things work out quite well, he will be an option for the starting 11 fairly soon. That's one thing, and Hennier is also someone that can be used in a variety of roles. So I think overall that's really it's really a plus to have these kind of players and not losing, of course, Jadon Sancho, hopefully, which is also then kind of a plus, of course, because you wouldn't have been able to replace him equally.
No, absolutely not. There's just no way to do that. So, Matthias, what's your assessment of maybe the overall balance of the team? Because Konstantin just talked about it. Losing Hakimi is obviously kind of a blow to Dortmund's structure on the field, or balance, or whatever you want to call it, because on the left side you have Guerrero, who's a very technical player with playmaking skills, and then you have the very direct wing back on the other side, which means you sort of have two different weapons that you can utilize, and this sort of falls flat a little bit. And we remember that Hakimi almost single-handedly decided Dortmund's group stage in the Champions League last season, and I think he was overall very influential in many ways. So, how do you think Dortmund make up for that? I mean, there is a bit of a loss, and do you think they will be a bit too center-focused with all the players and talent they have? Now, I mean, they just added another central midfielder with Bellingham, and Heinier is also more of a central attacker. How do you think this overall tactical balance will pan out?
Well, obviously, it requires some change. I mean, the advantage you have, or there's always pros and cons to everything. Hakimi, as great as he was attacking wise, he was occasionally quite the liability defensively. But he made up for it by the fact that he could just run back quicker than anybody else. So his at times questionable positional play defensively was made up by his physicality and his pace. I think Meunier is probably going to be more defensively, positionally aware, possibly. I haven't seen enough of him to say that per se, but he'll kind of have to be because he doesn't have the pace. And odds are on his right side, he's going to be paired up with a center back that maybe is also not super, super fast if it's Piszczek a lot. So they're going to have to change a little bit their attacking approach. And of course, if they try to funnel a lot centrally, it'll be easy for opponents to kind of block that avenue. And we've seen that in the past. I think that was one of the big issues in the first half of last season in the beginning, where the movement and it was just very static, and that's because the opponents dictated it accordingly, and Dortmund didn't really have the dynamism to change that with the formation they were using at the time. They changed to a back three, and all of a sudden things changed around a little bit. Now, obviously, they also have Holland, which they didn't have then, so that adds a new dynamic to it all. But yeah, of course, they're going to have to change a little bit, and there's going to be more emphasis on Jadon Sancho to do more in an attacking sense, because his partner there, which Hakimi definitely was, is going to be missing to a degree. So the ideal there is that he combines well with Holland, that there's fluidity and positional swapping between the wings, the two that sit behind the lone striker. And then depending on what the double pivot is, if Brandt is sitting in there which I do hope, you have that more creativity coming deeper centrally, which helps a lot of those, that build-up play and attacking opportunities. But yes, of course, they lose some dynamism. Ideally, they have gained some defensive stability from it, but that wasn't really a huge issue after switching to the back three. So it'll be interesting to see, and I'll still, call him Rainer just because I think it's funnier. But I'll be curious to see how he fits into that, because like you'd mentioned, I mean, Bellingham and him are more central and not really wing players. So are we a little bit too center heavy and not enough wing players? It's a little hard to say at this point. And preseason really didn't give at least me enough insight to make a judgment accordingly.
Yeah, definitely. So yesterday, Belgium had a game in the Nations League, and what we saw was Meunier as a right wing back and Torgan Hazard as a left wing back, and that got me thinking a little bit, Konstantin, and I don't know how you feel about this, but can you see Hazard playing a little bit of the Hakimi role? I mean, according to FBref.com, he is 82% right-footed, so it would also make sense to put him as a right wing back, unless obviously you have Meunier playing there, but I mean, he's a very hardworking player. He is very fast. He can defend, I would say. He has shown that in the past. So do you think that at some point in this season we might actually see Hazard as a right wing back?
I mean, I could see that, yes. Especially if there aren't or there isn't the possibility for him to have pick up a lot of playing time in a more advanced position, because Henry and Royce, Pont, and Sancho block him from playing as a secondary striker / winger. So yes, why not employ him in a different position, especially against teams that that aren't threaten him to counter him all the time. I think that's more of it should only be in matches where he is not that, or isn't he in demand so much to do defensive duties, clear-cut defensive duties. Yeah, defensive one-on-ones close to the box all the time. I mean, sometimes you have to, but even as an attacking winger, sometimes you have to, or all the time you have to track back and do something defensively. But of course, that could work. And as I said, that there might be the scenario where he's basically blocked from having picking out a lot of playing time up front, or basically in the shadow of Erling Haaland.
Yeah, definitely.
Big shadow, by the way.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And this is actually my next question. And since you are the most tactical mind on this show, Konstantin, how do you think Dortmund's attack will blossom throughout the season? Because as you mentioned previously, and as my dog just finds a squeaker toy, Haaland is obviously entering his second professional season, right? And he is only starting his first full season with Dortmund, and you have Gio Reyna breaking through more and more, and obviously Marco Reus is now back from injury, hopefully also for the long term. So with all this in mind and the potential and upsides, and I would count in Jadon Sancho as well, who is only 20 years old and probably has still ways to improve. How do you think the attack of Dortmund will flourish throughout the season? Because for me personally, this is probably one of the most things I'm looking forward to, if I'm honest.
I guess it all depends on how the system works, because I think and I go back to what we discussed earlier on, that last season, you got a tactical change after, what was it, before the Hertha match, basically. And then it worked out quite well over time, and especially pre-Corona break. And in these situations, you had Sancho especially working in the kind of, not as a winger, but more as an inverted winger, basically. In a more central role, where he's more comfortable, or what's his prime role. And same with a couple of other players. I think bar Julian Brandt, who isn't that comfortable in this kind of position, and who isn't really in left winger anymore. Maybe he was once upon a time, but he isn't anymore. So I guess it really depends on how the system overall works. Because Sancho, for instance, really benefited from having Hakimi on the right side. Because Hakimi could either go wide and go down the line, or could also support him more in the middle and like put a lot of pressure on opponents and give Sancho more free space. What I want to say is, like, I don't know what with Hakimi being out, maybe Sancho has to now change his style a little bit. So there are a lot of moving pieces right now, and what makes it really hard is that we don't know the lineup or the formation Dortmund will use in the first few matches. So because like watching the preseason friendlies, as I said, they use both. So I don't know. And even when they used the back three, played differently in midfield, like a free midfielder, 2 strikers. Of course, Holland wasn't on the pitch, so different kind of system, like basically 2 false nines, Royce and Henier, ahead of Brandt and Reina. So, you know, and that's another thing, like Reina, you can use him in this kind of advanced midfielder role. You can use him in a winger role. You can use him in the Sancho role, or in a role parallel to Sancho's. And I think there are always advantages and disadvantages to that kind of thing. I don't know if I would use him in an advanced midfielder role right now. Maybe down the line. Same with like Bellingham. Yeah. I mean, I even said that he could even play more advanced in the kind of Sancho role in some cases. Only thing is that, like, I don't know, he shouldn't shoot, by the way. That's Bellingham's big weakness at Birmingham was like he should never shoot. Because it's always more of a pass than really a shot, and that's one thing. But other than that, I mean, you can really use him also in these kind of areas. Where I think versatility is great, although sometimes it's also good when a coach decides like player X only is used in role Y and Z and not A, B, C, D, E, and F. Yeah. Just a little bit more focusing on one role and then developing the player into being the best player in this particular role.
Yeah, that does make sense, and that obviously brings me to the next question, which is obviously also impossible to answer, Matthias, but nevertheless I will ask it, and that is there is obviously right now a huge contingent of central midfielders, from Emre Can over Axel Witsel. You have Tobi Raschel, Julian Brandt, Delaney, Bellingham, Dahoud, and even Guerrero or Gio Reyna can all play in central midfield, either position. Well, not either position a double pivot, but in these 2 or 3 positions, depending on how Dortmund set up. There's obviously a lot of players, and a lot of players with a lot of quality. So there will be a lot of tough decisions to be made during the season. So, Matthias, how do you think Dortmund central midfield will fare throughout the season? Do you fear that an immense amount of rotation might sort of kill all flow and mojo, or do you think that Favre will have his favorite pair and then pretty much sticks to it as much as he can?
Well, I think there will have to be rotation because of the depth you mentioned. I think you can already discount to a certain degree Raschel. I think Guerrero as well. He'll play on the left wing-back position. Reina will play more advanced. When everyone's healthy, I don't foresee Dahoud showing up at all. So you're really down to Can, Witsel, Delaney, and Julian Brandt. I think Favre
not to forget Bellingham.
And Bellingham as well. But he, knowing Favre, I think it'll be a while before we see Bellingham in a starting lineup. I think a lot of it will come down to who the opposition is. The nice thing is, with all that depth and with the fact that the additional substitutions can still be made, correct? I thought I read that. For the Bundesliga season. So that gives Favre a ton of options to switch things up and the flexibility, because everybody offers something different depending on how you're going to pair up that central pivot. And so I see it as a positive and not a negative. If we had a lot of the exact same type of players looking at those positions with about the same average quality, then I'd be very concerned. Right now, I'm not concerned at all. I just see it as options. And someone like Can, he can also play in the back three if need be. Brandt can play further up the pitch. Bellingham can play further up the pitch. So there's a lot of flexibility there, even though, like you said, there are a lot of players. But that gives him a few more options that he didn't necessarily have last season.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I really hope he doesn't mess it up. Konstantin, I know Lars' favorite player is Julian Brandt right now, but I'm a little bit worried looking at him in this preseason. He looks very much out of form. Do you think that's due to that players like Bellingham are a threat to him, or do you think that he will play regularly one way or another just because of all the upside and quality that he has?
I mean, normally he should, but one thing to keep in mind is that sometimes Brandt tends to be bullied around by opponents if he's not fully fit. So that sometimes happens, and I'm a little bit concerned about Brandt, because even last season, either he was outstanding or he wasn't there at all. There wasn't much in between. And I mean, of course, we all hope that it's more the former, but hard to say. I think him struggling with like fitness and preseason form is nothing unusual. And in general, him struggling with or being not the fittest player, we should get used to it, I guess, because I also saw it sometimes last season. Midway through the season, where he didn't look like 100% kind of player, and more like, all right, he runs out of gas after 60 or so, or he's not as quick and as dynamic as he might be or should be for the type of player he is. So that's why I also think that like the left or like the left winger position is not really for him anymore.
Yeah, I agree, and especially in the context if Dortmund, which I don't know, intend to play at some point a little bit more of an aggressive counter-pressing, which big teams sometimes tend to do because it's easier to remain dominant in the game and then retain possession or do whatever. I mean, Bayern do it very efficiently and effectively these days. So Matthias, that actually brings me a little bit more to the Marco Reus question, because he just played 70 minutes against Sparta Rotterdam, scored a goal, a very nice goal. And he was playing together, at least in the first half, with Heinier leading the line. Well, what was obvious right from the start is that he gave the team more pressing impulses than we've probably seen over all games during the preseason. So do you think this is something that A, Dortmund have to work on, and B, can improve more with the return of Marco Reus?
So I guess for the second time in today's episode, I'm going to answer your question by saying yes and yes. He definitely brings more of that because it's more ingrained in him. At times in matches, even in the second half of last season, Dortmund seemed a little bit passive in their pressing. I know Favre isn't a mega press guy, but you need to be a little bit more aggressive. And I think Marco Reus, in his more leadership role as well, can kind of bring that out in players, is less passive, less standoffish than some other players. Obviously, I hope he maintains his fitness, because I think a fit and top of his game, Marco Reus is one of the best players in the Bundesliga and makes Dortmund extremely effective and good. So, I think that's exactly one of the qualities that, aside from his ability to score goals, his pace, his directness, his passing, his footballing IQ, and his passion, that's obviously a big, big benefit to having Marco Reus in the side.
Yeah, definitely. And I do hope that he has more rotation. I really hope that Favre doesn't burn Reus out right away again. And I really do hope that he can do a little bit of job sharing with Gio Reyna, because if the preseason has made one thing very clear, is that Reyna really is on the ascent, and I think will have a much, much different season than his first professional year. I mean, he's still waiting for his first league goal, but I don't think that we will have to wait that long for it to happen, to be honest. Now, Konstantin, I already said Dortmund will probably not have a chance to finish higher than second, so that means Dortmund need to perform much, much better in the cup competitions. Do you have any easy answers of what Dortmund need to change in order to prevail a little bit better in the Champions League and obviously in the German Cup, and not bow out against a team that's almost relegated?
No, because there isn't anything to. I mean, you just have to. you have to play these matches the same way you play most of the Bundesliga matches. Unless, like, maybe the last match day where you only need a draw to win or something, to win the championship or something like that. But usually you go for victory, and you should also do that against most of these teams. And I mean, as we know, Dortmund famously are struggling in the DFB Pokal. Although I mean, it has improved.
We always said that they're famously bad, and then they made the final like almost every year for like 5 years.
It was weird, but there was a time where they played Osnabrück or something, and they won't end well.
Or Offenbach or so, yeah.
Or Offenbach, yeah, and all these kind of F-up matches. So no, I don't think so. I mean, and also, of course, German Cup is widely different than Champions League, and in Champions League, it comes down to how on top of your game are you, even in the group stage where you might meet a few of these teams from Eastern Europe or so, or will maybe shrug a little bit and say, well, you should beat them. Still, I mean, if you're not on top of your game, the away matches will be a pain. And that's also kind of the intrigue of the Champions League. There have been other top tier teams that have struggled against some of the lower tier, quote unquote lower tier competition. So I mean, you saw it last season. Like even in the group stage, Dortmund were struggling heavily, and that was also connected to just bad Bundesliga performances, where it was just one big picture where Dortmund was really trembling. So no, there's nothing else to do. I mean, it's the only thing the coach can do, other than put enough thought into pre-match analysis and pre-match preparation, as much as you can do it with a tight schedule. It's just think about energy conservation. Basically, who could play in the Bundesliga, and then who could play the Wednesdays in Champions League and stuff like that, and how can you use the depth of your roster to the best. And I mean, Dortmund, as opposed to some other teams, they at least have a lot of depth. So you have a deep bench, and you should make use of that. I think that's one. I mean, if you really desperately look for one point where Dortmund might be better than Bayern, then it's bench. Then it's the bench and the depth of the bench, because Bayern, no bueno.
Yeah, that's true. Especially if Bayern lose Thiago, I think they. I don't know if they dip in quality, but losing Thiago is a heavy blow to me. He has been one of the best Bundesliga players in how long has he been at Bayern now? 7 years or so? I think he joined in 2013 or so.
Then you got two center midfielders, Kimmich and Goretzka, and like your backup is Tolisso, who hasn't set the world on fire at Bayern.
No. So yeah. That is maybe one position where Dortmund might edge Bayern. But that being said, depth is also a big issue at Dortmund right now, especially in the backline, which is why I'm not too optimistic, especially for the season start, because Dan-Axel is out with a knee injury, and then you have Hummels and Akanji as your only center backs. Dortmund obviously let go of Balerdi. Not that he was an immense contribution last season, but it's getting very tight at the back for Dortmund, which is why the back three, I guess, makes more sense than the back four, because at least with the halfbacks you can employ guys like Emre Can or Lukas Piszczek, and them as full center backs makes things a little tougher. So it's something that Dortmund probably need to address, but I'm not sure whether they can find another competent center back just out of the blue. So that's probably something that we will keep discussing as the season progresses. Without any further ado, I think maybe it is time for us to then predict the final league table. Konstantin, do you want to go first?
I didn't know we had to predict the final league table, but all right.
No.
I mean, you never told me that.
I'm sorry.
Oh, jeez. All right, let's go. So first, Bayern. Second, Dortmund. Third, Leipzig. Were kind of boring. Basically, last year's result. Actually, fourth is also Gladbach. I'm just going by basically strength of the team. No magic applied here. Fifth, I think Leverkusen keeps fifth, although kind of a drop in quality right now. Sixth, I would go with Hertha Berlin. Seventh should be Wolfsburg. Eighth, Frankfurt. Ninth, Hoffenheim? No. Ninth, Dave Hoeneß. Ninth should be Mainz. 10th should be Stuttgart. 11th should be Hoffenheim. 12th should be Cologne. 13th should be Augsburg. You're 13th, right?
Mm-hmm.
14th should be Schalke. 15th should be, who's left? Freiburg? Oh, no, Bremen. 16th, Freiburg. 17th, Bielefeld. 18th, Union.
Very nice, Matthias.
Well, I've got a lot of similarities there in kind of the top eight. So Bayern is going to be first, and I just believe they're going to be, it's going to be like 10-point gap. And then we've got Dortmund and Leipzig probably close. And then another bigger gap, and then we have Gladbach. So, great minds think alike. I'm flipping Hertha and Leverkusen. I'm putting Hertha in fifth and Leverkusen in sixth. Seventh, I've got Frankfurt and eighth Wolfsburg. So there's a flip. Now I'm going to go with a little bit more controversial, and maybe this is because this is my nephew's favorite team, but I think we're going to have a bit of a bounce back from Bremen, and I'm going to put them at ninth. I've got Hoffenheim in at 10th, just because I'll be honest, I have no idea what to expect from the side and the coach. Köln, I've got 11th. Schalke, I've got 12th. 13th, I've got Augsburg. Freiburg, I've got 14th. I have very little faith in Mainz, that's why they're 15th. I have very little faith in Stuttgart just because they disappointed me the last time they were in the league, so they are 16th. But I think they'll survive. And then I've got 17th, Union Berlin. And I think 18th will be the cannon fodder of the league this season, and that will be Arminia Bielefeld.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, I have a very similar table, only with the exception of Stuttgart maybe. Because I also start with Bayern, Dortmund, and Leipzig, and then I have Gladbach in fourth place and Hertha in fifth, actually, then Leverkusen, Frankfurt, Stuttgart, and then Wolfsburg, Hoffenheim, and then Bremen already, because I also hope and believe, maybe it's a little bit of wishful thinking just with the Stuttgart finishing so high, that they bounce back. Then I have Cologne, Freiburg, and Schalke is in the relegation zone, and Union and Arminia are last. And I think actually, no, there's Augsburg still underneath Schalke. Sorry, so Schalke just makes it. So I think I also forgot Mainz. Oh well.
I mean, you were prepared.
I was not prepared.
But I managed to at least get it together and name the 18th teams and have a ranking.
Yeah,
proper ranking.
I was not prepared, to be honest. I thought I could make it on the fly, and I forgot about Mainz.
Well, you can't.
So
Not always can manage that. But also I find it quite funny that the Bundesliga is like this big. A big nameless crowd of all the Mainzes and Colognes and Augsburgs. They are in Freiburgs. They are just much in there, somewhere between 8th and 16th, basically. Yeah, just some random ranking, and you never know. And I would have to look up last year's ranking or last season's ranking to really figure out. Actually, Union was 11th, right? And Mainz was 13th. Well, whatever.
Yeah. I'm sorry, Mainz. I didn't mean to forget you. Usually the team that I forget when someone asks me to list all 18 Bundesliga sides is usually always Berlin or Hertha, to be exact, because now we have 2 teams. So but this time it was Mainz and Augsburg, I guess. So anyway, Matthias, while we're here, a quick prediction for the cup game against Duisburg, so that we just can say that we've mentioned it.
I think Dortmund's going to win that one 3-0.
All right. Konstantin?
A very pretty 3-1.
Yeah, that's also my prediction. I feel like this is sort of the classic result for first round cup game. It's never anything pretty, just Dortmund somehow getting the job done and somehow conceding a ridiculous goal. So, as always, thanks guys for coming on. Matthias, how can people reach you on the Bird app?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthiasuk.
And you, Konstantin?
Yeah, CC_ECKNER on Twitter.
Very well. You can find me at Stefan Butzko. You can find all of us at Yellowwallpod on Twitter and Facebook. And if you want to subscribe to the show, please do that via YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, etc. And if you want to contribute financially, please do that via patreon.com/theyellowwall. And this should be all for this week's episode. And we will be back with, I guess, maybe an analysis of the German Cup game. I mean, we'll have the first lineup to discuss and all that and more. So very exciting. I hope everyone has a nice start to the season. May Bayern lose and Schalke. And with that, until next week, and goodbye.